Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joar, and today is Thursday, August 1st, 2024. And I've got the awesome Rich DeMuro here with me today. Hi, Rich. How are you?
Hey, Miriam. Doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Looking forward to your insights. I love the fact that you are, catering to a much broader audience than my tech savvy early adopter audience. So it's really great to get your thoughts on it because you always have a slightly different perspective. And we've got a bunch of news this week. It's not been a crazy news week, obviously. A lot of the good stuff is coming up with Pixel and other things. Of course, there's going to be iPhone very soon as well. But you've played with the iOS beta, for example. I haven't done that. Galaxy Ring, I don't know if you have one. I'm waiting for my device still. Have you played with it enough to have a thought? Okay.
Absolutely. I've been wearing it. Of course, I have it. I left it. I've not been wearing it every single day.
Right.
But I have worn it a lot, and I do have thoughts on it. A lot of thoughts.
Well, let's talk about that first then, because I feel like, I'm waiting for mine. Samsung's sending me one finally. They were in, I don't know if it was the same for you in Paris, but in New York City at the event, they ran out of the larger sizes immediately. And so I think they were very selective. And then we thought, oh, well, we'll get it next week. But here we are, early August, and they're only shipping now. So you're very lucky you got one.
Yeah, you're not the only one. I know other people that are in the same boat. So don't feel so bad.
What are your thoughts? Like, what would you tell people who are considering this? And maybe let's kind of divide them into two groups: people who have a smartwatch and people who don't have a smartwatch.
Yeah, I think that is the big issue here for me, is that I wear a smartwatch and I love my smartwatch. But the problem with the Ring, and the Ring is great. The Ring is, to me, it's really well crafted. It's light. The battery lasts a long time. I love the insights that you get from the Samsung Health app. It syncs nicely, all that good stuff. The only problem I have is that if I'm wearing a smartwatch, why do I need a smart ring? And I know that they have tried to position this as an accessory to the watch. And of course, the battery lasts longer. If you have the watch, it takes the best reading of the two. But to me, I don't get it. So it's either you have a watch or you have a ring. And so I think this is great for people that don't have a watch. But for me personally, I'm struggling because now I just feel like I'm wearing more tech than I need to. And as much as I love technology, I don't want to be drowning in tech. And in fact, I want my life to be simpler. And I think for people that don't have a watch, the Ring does make life simpler. I love it. My one thing, and I don't know what you think of this idea, but for me, it would actually cause me to ditch my smartwatch if the Ring could vibrate, because then I could get my notifications and be alerted of the important stuff without my watch.
That's fair. I've thought of that myself, as notification is a big part of my wearable experience. But obviously it doesn't have that yet. It might. I think that even just a kind of glowing light that kind of like is subtly projected on the sides of your finger or something would be also cool. But
which incidentally, that happens at night when you're wearing it to bed. And so you have an ET finger, I call it.
Because it's shining all kinds of LEDs into your blood vessels and stuff, like the smartwatches do. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's like it's hard for you to suggest that people should wear both. What I'm hearing from a lot of folks who are more into tracking their health and fitness is that it does actually works really well to just wear it at night, and then wear a smartwatch in the daytime, or add a smartwatch in the daytime for the notifications, for the apps on the screen, like, for the Siri and whatever else you want. But also because if you wear the Samsung Galaxy Watch, the 7 or the Ultra, and the Ring at the same time, they're both using less energy because they're aware of each other and they're actually running their sensors kind of like, I'm going to take this, you're going to take that, and divvying it out, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's smart for Samsung to do that.
But I think that, so I think there is potentially a, world where people wear a watch and a ring maybe during the day, but I don't see anyone wearing a watch and the ring at night together. I think the ring really solves the nighttime problem to me.
100%. And I
because
love that aspect of it, but it seems to me for $400
it's a lot.
for the average person, that is a lot to just wear something to track your sleep. And you can get a Fitbit for way cheaper that you put on, but again, I think the Ring is a growth area, and I think that it's great that Samsung's getting into this. I do take issue a little bit with some of the reviews I've seen that say, "Oh, it's a Samsung only ring or it's an Android only ring." It's like, come on, nobody, when Apple comes out with anything, says, "Oh, it's iOS only." Like, that's just like the standard.
Yeah, I think that's a little hypocritical, isn't it? But I also think that you're touching on something else interesting here in the sense that you know I think the audience should be aware the Ring really only does two things, right? It's like sleep tracking is the big one, and your regular step like basic fitness tracking. Like, don't expect what a smartwatch can do here, right? Like, there's no major, super accurate measurements here. If you're really into, your health and fitness, you will want to wear a smartwatch in the daytime. And that, so at that point, do you take off the Ring or do you keep the Ring on?
When you work out or something.
Well, you also, when you work out, you're doing weights, it's probably gonna get in your way, right?
Well,
Like,
it doesn't as much as you think it would.
okay,
I was concerned about that, and also scratching. And so of course I did, go to the gym and try it out in that way. And it really seemed to kind of blend away.
okay.
And so I didn't really have a big issue with that. I was even wearing, I'm not sure if you've worn the Aura Ring, but I had that for a while. And again, I felt like it's a little bit bulkier than the Samsung one. I think the Samsung is a better design, but I didn't have a problem with that one either at the gym. For
Okay.
me, I'll be quite honest. The problem I have with the Ring is when I'm on my phone seems to hit it on the back, like the Ring hits the back of the phone. And then this is totally crazy, but when I do my hair and I put like any kind of gel or anything, I just feel like it's like all over the Ring because it gets like caught underneath it. But that's maybe a me problem. I don't know. It depends on
No, that's
your
totally
hair care.
fair. Plus, your hair is you're on always on point, Rich. So
Thank you.
I believe that is a very valid concern. Look, I think the other thing to understand, I think for the audience is that you have choices, right? Aura's been around. I have never. I'm a Ring virgin, so I'm really looking forward to this, right?
Oh, wow.
And for me, what I really want is sleep tracking. That's what my most important one because right now I'm wearing OnePlus Watch 2. I also have a Galaxy Ultra, the new watch. I'm waiting to kind of get the Ring to really kind of like get it out of the box and get it going. But I feel like I'm excited to see, what other rings come about. The Oura ring obviously has been around for a while. It's rock solid from what a lot of people are saying. They love it. And it's a subscription based though, right? So it's a little more affordable, but you're a bit locked in. And I mean, who knows if Samsung will eventually roll out a subscription model. There's a lot of talk about that around the AI features. And obviously there's AI. And I'm not talking about Gen AI. I'm just talking about just AI smarts, like machine learning stuff around wearables. A lot of the algorithms around like sleep tracking and apnea and your blood oxygen, all that is based on machine learning, right? So
Yeah.
I'm wondering when it'll be that Samsung turns that on or Apple turns that on. I mean, Apple already has Fitness Plus, and most people end up buying it because it does add a lot of functionality. So I'm wondering, like, do you think, like, where do you stand on here and what do you recommend to consumers? Because everything seems to be going subscription. It's a real pain. Like, I don't mind paying, for example, for a data connection for my car. That's, I think, reasonable. I pay for data connection for all my connected devices. The network isn't free, right? Like, so I get that. But, like BMW tried to like charge people for using their heated seats. I don't know if you remember this. It was not in the US, it was UK and other markets. And it obviously landed as well as you'd expect, very poorly. But like when the hardware is already there, like, and in Aura's case, the hardware is already there. So like, where do you draw the line, right? Like the other one is like just Ford yesterday announced that the Mach-E electric car is getting a software update that you can buy for $1,000 that gives you more performance. Now, Tesla's had that for quite a while, and I actually paid for the Tesla upgrade on my car when I had a Tesla, and it was worth it. It was a faster car for the whole time I had it. It wasn't a monthly thing. It was a one-time payment. But people got really upset. They're like, well, why don't I get the maximum speed? Well, I think people have to understand, right? Like, you're putting more and wear and tear on the motors, on the battery. So at that point, it's more warranty potentially, right? It's like, so you're paying for that. Like what's happening is with EVs, a lot of, and I'm wondering if we're going to see the same in consumer tech, like personal tech, is as the technology evolves and people are using it more, they're able to unlock more features because they're able to measure and say like, oh, well, it turns out the motors aren't wearing out as much as we thought, or it turns out the batteries are actually holding on really well. So let's give them a bit more juice so that they can go a little faster and get them to pay us a fee for it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know where you stand on that because you advise a lot of consumers. You know, where do you think we're going with this?
Well, I mean, I think where we're going is 100% subscriptions for everything. I mean, you can't. I don't think that any company has a product at this point without two things involved in it, which is AI and a subscription. And so the subscription, like we saw with Fitbit, now they have a subscription, and of course they give you a nice long runway of 6 months when you buy your product, or same thing. I think they give you 3 months. And yes, you can use these products without the subscription, but in the back of your head, we've all been programmed as consumers that they're just not as good. And that's the big issue, is that you have to give consumers a reason to feel comfortable paying for that. I think that Samsung kind of did themselves a little bit of a disservice, because not only did they say there is no subscription for this ring, they kind of made it a selling point of the device. And maybe that was to justify the higher price than Aura. But I think they backed themselves into a little bit of a corner, because now if they ever want to bring a subscription to this ring, it's going to be really tough. But I think at the same time, we've gotten used to subscriptions, and you feel like, if all these stats and things that Samsung wants to give you with the ring, those algorithms take time to develop. And, I'm not saying I want to pay for that, but I think people are comfortable with the idea. It's just this very tread lightly kind of situation for Samsung specifically, because every other product we've seen, even with the iPhone, if you think about it, the iPhone did not start out as this like creeping subscription, but now the more you're locked into Apple's ecosystem, and even Google with some of Google Drive and photos and all that stuff, it really does kind of start like, okay, well, if you want the best, you got to pay for Google Photos to get your storage. If you want the best, you got to pay for, like you said, Apple Fitness to unlock these little tiny things. And it's a weird world we're in, because it's just, there's so many payments for so many things.
Yeah, it's getting tough. And I think you're right. I think Samsung's really experimenting. I have to give them credit for, kind of trying to get their feet wet here. They're the first big player in this ring world, right? Like, haha, ring world, awesome. That's a nerdy reference.
There you go.
But I think they are, and I think in that sense, like Apple's probably going to follow suit. Like they can't stay quiet on this, and I think this is healthy because the prices are going to drop, even if there is a subscription attached. And I would be surprised. Samsung's reneged on a bunch of stuff in the past. Everybody has, like, Apple has, and like the headphone jack with Samsung. Remember, like they're like, we're not gonna. Oh yeah, we did.
We did it.
So I get it, but I'm just saying, like right now, today, $400 is a lot of money, but at least you don't have a subscription. And if you don't want to be an early adopter, don't do it. Wait 2 years. I'll be a $200 Samsung ring that does probably more, because even though the technology will be identical, just reduced in price, amortized over time, and Moore's law and all that stuff, the features are going to be better because the AI, the ML, the processing of that data will improve. So I think my gut feeling is, wait a little bit, because you're going to get a better price and better features in 2 years. And it's not a critical thing. As you said, you can buy like a Xiaomi band for $50 that's sold on Amazon and supported. It's not, some fly-by-night thing. Or even, in the old days, Huawei did some really great bands. They're still available too, but you're probably not as comfortable with that, and I can understand why these days. But I'm saying there are some good products out there, or just even a Fitbit, right? Like a basic Fitbit band, and wear that at night. It's very light. It doesn't get in your way like a smartwatch does, and it will track your sleep just as well as that ring, or possibly better, for $50, right? So I think there are some solutions, and but it's interesting to see Samsung dive into this and how they're positioning it. And yeah, it's pricey, but I have to say, it's a titanium ring. it's going to be hopefully very durable. We'll find out.
And I think they nailed it on all of those aspects. Like I think the actual for a first generation hardware, I think they did a really nice job with this thing, even down to the case. I'm not sure what people think of the case, what the reviews have been, but I kind of like it. They kind of played off of a Ring case, and that's fun. It charges it. It's got the nice light around it. The battery for me seems to last. But on your other point about getting a separate like a Fitbit or something, I do think that there is something that Samsung has touched upon here, and so has Apple when they decide to do this, is that data, and especially the playing nicely with the other Samsung watch, it sort of works together and your data goes into one place. So, Samsung Health is now like how many times have people opened Samsung Health on their phone before the Ring? Maybe not much. But now that this data is going from both the watch and the Ring into this app that, by the way, is very well designed.
Yeah.
So there is something to be said for that. And I think the biggest thing with the Aura is that, it is in its own kind of world on the iPhone, and people that have the iPhone love everything being in one place. They love Apple kind of taking over their whole world. And I think some of that data goes to the Health app, but it's not as rich as it is in the Aura app. So I think all of this plays into the fact that we are just at the beginning of this whole Ring journey. And I think there will be many Rings sold soon.
So in general, you're saying if you're an early adopter and you have the money, try it out.
Oh
basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And what's not to like? I mean, I think the whole like wearing the Ring with the watch, that's a personal preference. Like for me, I just kind of like being simple, and I already carry around enough phones and I already have enough stuff in my bag that I'm like, this Ring that I love, but like, do I need the stats during the day because I've got the watch on? Now at night, of course, I want to wear that, but I think that is a tough sell for a lot of people for $400 just to slip a Ring on at night.
Yeah. And it's the same as you look at their watches, right? The Ultra is $650. The Watch 7 is like $299 or something. Honestly, if you compare the spec sheet and the features, yeah, sure, the Ultra is more bulletproof. It's like salt water resistant and has, the ability to measure things at higher altitudes and stuff. But the Watch 7 will do 99% of what the Ultra does. And do you really want to spend more than twice as much to get that? Probably not, right?
Yeah.
Pragmatically, that's kind of the thing. But at the same time, Apple has shown us that people, like, I see more Watch Ultras out there on wrist than I see. Maybe it's because it's more noticeable, but I swear it seems like that's taken over the Apple Watch ecosystem.
Well, I think it's also because of people want something different. People have had the Apple Watch for 8 generations or 7 generations before the Ultra came out. And when they see that it's premium, it's, and the battery does last longer. But both of these devices, whether it's the Apple Watch or the Ultra from Samsung, they're both Ultras. They're both basically the regular watch in kind of larger clothing. You know what I mean? Like it's
beefier, more rugged. Yeah.
Yeah. And the battery is bigger on them. But, at the same time, and the GPS is better. I mean, there are some things.
For sure.
Like both of them have the 2-band GPS versus like the 1-band. So there are some advantages to the Ultra. And I think people that either hike or do anything that like requires their watch to track them for a long time do appreciate that longer battery and kind of the more rugged nature of those devices.
Or buy a Garmin because they're crazy.
People do love the Garmins.
I know,
people
no offense to you
Garmins.
Garmin folks out there. I do believe that they're a whole different position, and I get it. But there's some overlap. I know some people who have a Garmin to go hiking and wear an Apple Watch Ultra every day because they still get some. I mean, speaking of rings, in competition, I mean, I just saw this. I mean, I have no idea what this company does and how good the product is, but there is a $90 ring out there. GSM Arena wrote about it. It's called the Realme, ROLL Me R3, and it's a $90 smart ring, and it positions itself as being able to do basically the same as a Galaxy ring or an Oura ring. So yeah. I don't know if it's out. I guess it's looking like it's coming soon because they've launched two rings already, the R1 and the R2 in January and March. So I'm not sure what they're doing here with this pace of launch. But
quick.
If it's Chinese, it's quite possible. They are often able to iterate very quickly. So
I mean, I think this goes to show that there are going to be inexpensive rings out there. Don't forget that Google Fitbit, they're going to get in on this at some point because they will. And I think Fitbit will probably be a lower priced ring as well, making up some of that money on the subscription side of things as well. But I think that everything is in motion for the ring to be a big growth area for these tech companies when, we know smartphones and speakers, they've done it all. And
Right.
watches, but so they need something new. And I don't know about the race to like $90 right away, because that's really going to kind of eat at some of their profits here. But I think, we saw the Aura at 300, Galaxy Ring at 400. We'll see Apple, what they do. There'll probably be a premium price as well there.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because you look at the specs and it's pretty much matching what we're getting from, the competition that's $300 to $400. I'm sure the software is where the differentiation is going to be.
I'm
right?
so glad you said that.
Right.
Yep.
And I think that's obvious. So, at the same time, keep in mind that a lot of these, kind of no-name brand or lesser known brands for North American customers that do fitness bands and stuff generally integrate, if you're on Android, it integrate with Google Fit. So like you install their app and the app doesn't really look good or do much, but then there's a button somewhere in the settings where you can go like send that data to Fit.
Yes.
And then you can actually look at it in the Google Fit app and actually, it merges with your smartphone and smartwatch data. So there's actually some benefit to that. It's not necessarily like what you really want is good algorithms to process the data. Once you get that data in an app, the app doesn't have to be that good because you can send it to, on Apple, you can send it to Apple Health and Google Fit. And maybe I hope Fitbit and Google Fit kind of merge eventually in some kind of logical way, because right now it doesn't make much sense. But that's it. I wanted to chat with you for our audience about the Galaxy Ring because I don't have it yet. And I know you had and others have. And, it's kind of getting long in the tooth that we discuss it on the podcast a little bit. So thanks for jumping in on that. The next thing I want to chat with you about is related to the Nothing Phone 2A and the Realme 13 Pro Plus, two phones that were announced this week. We have one of them here, and I want to do a quick unboxing. For those of you on Patreon, this is the first time I've done an actual unboxing, but there's a video version of this podcast for Patreon. So patreon.com/TNKGRL. But I'll show you that in a second. The reason these two phones are interesting is because, well, I can't say nothing, I can't say no to a nothing phone, basically is what it boils down to. This is an update, right? Have you played with a 2A? So far already?
No, I played. I'll be honest. As you mentioned, since I cover for consumers, the Nothing 2A, and then what was the one before it? There was
two. Just the two. Yeah.
Okay. So whatever the main phone was, I think it was last year it came out.
Yeah.
Was that the Nothing 2?
Yeah.
That's the one. I love that phone. So that was, but they've come out with two like beta phones.
Yeah, so there's the 2A, and then they got the CMF phone 1 just a couple of weeks back, and then now we're getting this 2A plus. And really, the difference between the 2A and
2A plus, that's the difference.
So the 2A plus is basically a slightly faster processor that MediaTek kind of essentially customized one of the 7300 series for them and made it the 7350. They've done this before. Qualcomm did a special version of their chip for the phone 1. So they like to do that. And then it's a little more expensive. It's got a better front-facing camera. And as I said, this processor upgrade. But we're not talking about a major update here. The 2A, and 2A Plus are cosmetically identical. And the big difference between that and the phone 2 that you reviewed is there's glyphs, but there's less of them. And then there's that like very cool little minion design with the two cameras being side by side. So anyway, I just mostly wanted to mention it for the audience so that they know it exists. If you've been longing to buy a Nothing Phone 2A, well, I think spend $50 more and buy the 2A Plus because you're just getting a slightly better phone.
With the caveat though, and this is why I don't review them, is because they're not fully supported in the US.
That's right. So these are they're sold by Nothing in the US on their store, but they don't have the full set of bands for US. Now, I've played with the 2A because I reviewed it for Hot Hardware, and it worked just fine on AT&T and T-Mobile 5G, no issues, right? So the pricing for this is $399, and that's not a bad price, honestly, for what you're getting. And that's what the shtick is. It's not fully supported, but if you
Yeah.
want an affordable, something that's different than a Pixel 8a, this might be the ticket, right?
And I love the Nothing phone too. I think that the software that they're creating is fantastic. I really like it. It was one of my favorite phones. The main reason why I couldn't keep using the 2 is because it didn't have a zoom camera. So
Right.
it just didn't have a zoom lens, and but I thought the videos were great. The audio, everything was great on that phone. I really, really enjoyed it. And I keep seeing them come out with these like sub phones that are in their beta program. And I'm like, why don't you just come out with a better, a 3 that addresses some of the issues?
It's coming, I'm sure. But you remember that their big market share, Nothing, is India, right? Where price is much more sensitive. So that's why, the original 2A was $350. This is $400. So they're probably going to sell them side by side, because there's some people who are going to want to spend that extra money, some are not. And then, the CMF Phone 1 is $200, and it's really good. Like it's got almost the same chipset, and it's got a 120 hertz OLED display and a 50 megapixel rear camera. Now it lacks OIS, it doesn't have the glyphs,
no NFC,
but still, like, I don't think you can get a better phone in North America for $200.
No.
In other parts of the world, there's competition, but here, the fact that it's available in their store is pretty awesome.
And I love that they're doing this. I love that they're pushing the envelope. They continue to come out, not just with these phones, but they're also unique too. Like all these, everything, whether it's CMF or Nothing, they're different, and they have like this design language that's kind of fun. And so I think that they're putting that fun into phones, which is really with the mainstream phones, like from Samsung, Samsung, Google, and Apple. It's kind of like they've gotten a little bit boring, as much as they still are fun to us. The average person sees it and they go, okay, looks like an iPhone, looks like a Samsung, looks like a Samsung. You have a Nothing phone or the CMF, and they do look different.
I agree with you. Like, I think that, it's interesting for my audience who's kind of tech savvy early adopter, or people who are looking to get a, different phone that's affordable, because they're on a budget, but they don't want to just walk into like Cricket or, Metro by T-Mobile and buy their Moto G or whatever, 100%, right? Like,
100%. Like, and I think that there are those folks out there that are like a little bit more savvy. Because if you look in those stores, like you see what they offer, and you're like, you could do so much better with like a CMF phone or a Nothing phone, or and so I'm glad that these companies are putting them out there. I think it's tough to reach like the average person that wants to get something that's cool and fun. And maybe I'm doing a disservice by not covering some of these funky phones.
Well, you have your hands full, like I do, with all the mainstream stuff that is going to be sold in carrier stores and is on people's radar. It's hard, right? Like, I try to balance it out because my audience is a little more into that stuff, but like it's difficult. Like this Realme I'm about to show on video, it's the same kind of deal, right? Like, it's not sold here, but it's really interesting. And so, where do you draw the line? I think it's a tough call. And, but it's good, for my podcast, it's good to at least inform my audience that it exists and let them check it out. So Realme 13 Pro Plus. So I've got the box here. The thing about this phone is that the Realme numbered series is always a number, and there's a regular and a Pro and a Pro Plus. And as you can see, Pro Plus here, this is basically a $350-ish phone. I don't know the exact price because it's India and it varies, but $300 to $400 phone. So similar to what we were just talking about, the Nothing Phone 2A Plus or 2A, or like say the Pixel 8A or 7A if you buy last year's model and slightly discounted, in the sense that they're affordable mid-range, but they have really good cameras. And, Pixel doesn't necessarily position itself that way, but we know from experience that it has good cameras. So with this thing, they're like really pushing the envelope. I'll read you the back here. It's got a dual 50 megapixel OIS AI camera, and it's got a Sony Periscope OIS camera. And then this 32 megapixel selfie, 120 hertz curved OLED, Snapdragon 7S Gen 2, 80-watt fast charging, and a 5200 milliamp hour battery. Like,
Wow.
even if the cameras are like just generic here, that's a pretty damn good set of specs for the price, right?
Yeah.
But then you have this crazy camera system, right? I'll bring up the specs so we can look at them together. But it's like, you get a 50 megapixel main sensor with OIS, f/1.8. It's pretty decent. Then it's got a telephoto that's 50 megapixel, and that's a periscope telephoto, and it's also got optical image stabilization. And then you've got ultra wide that's 8 megapixels, so that's the where they're cutting some corners, right? But you don't see that at that price point, so that's kind of what I'm excited about.
Yeah.
All right, let's open it up. Okay, here we go, and so there's a divider here first. I'll get to that in a second. Then you get the phone. The phone has got this own little cardboard thing. So I'll just show you the phone real quick.
And where's Realme out of?
They're owned by BBK Group. They're a sub-brand of OnePlus and Oppo. So there's the phone. Now I can see
I can see the OnePlus kind of styling. Yeah.
So here is that crazy camera system. Now, where they cut corners is, I'm not sure if this is glass. It might be plastic. Sometimes it's glass, but the frame is plastic, right? But it does have that curved display, like some of the OnePlus 12 does. And it looks pretty rich, pardon the pun.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
What is this? This is like a gold color?
Yeah, it's a gold color, and it's got this weird kind of like pearlescent, like kitchen counter, again, like the OnePlus.
Yeah. And they share a lot of the R&D apparently.
But if you look at this display, I'm just firing it up real quick. Like, this is not a crappy display. This is like the whole enchilada 1080p goodness at 120 hertz. I don't think it's LTPO, but and
6.7 inch screen. Yeah.
And then it has that knurled finish around the camera. That's all plastic, but it does look pretty cool, right? And so look, you see this display? Look, the bezels, pretty even. The color change you're seeing is actually an animation running in the background. Okay. And as you can see, does that look like OnePlus's OS?
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks just like Oxygen.
Yeah.
So what do they call it? What does Realme call theirs?
Realme UI,
of course. There you go.
As one does. All right, so that's for the phone. And then quickly in the box, the nice thing is it comes with a charger here, right?
Got the brick.
And it comes with a cord as well. And this is one of those fast VOOC chargers, so it's a C2A cable. And this is going to charge at 80 watt, which is great, right? Because you get the thing in the box and you can actually use it right off the top of your head. Also nice is that all these phones always come with a case. So this divider here has, the SIM removal tool in it and, a bunch of other little things. So you got your SIM removal tool, and then you get the documentation, but you get this TPU case. So if you're worried you're going to drop the phone the first few days until you get a nicer case, if you are a case person, they've got you covered.
It's nice that's nice to have, because you also maybe in India where they're selling this, you said you might be able to find an easy case, but the fact to have it right off the bat is nice.
Yeah. So I expect an unboxing video on my YouTube channel at some point, since this was an unboxing that didn't require me to break, tear, or destroy anything. I'll be able to put it back in the box and do it again for you guys properly in front of a good camera. But, special bonus content for the Patreons. Yay. So yeah, the Realme 13 Pro Plus, I feel, is pretty damn great specs for the money. Like, you're getting, I'd say 80% of OnePlus 12 experience for, less than half the price, basically.
What do you think the downside is of that device?
I think, Realme UI is very similar to, ColorOS and Oxygen OS. And so it's solid. That's used to be an issue with a lot of these phones. Like the Vivo, for example, that's coming. That's very similar. We're going to talk about it in a second. Is going to be pretty bad experience in terms of software. Vivo is also part of BBK, but they're kind of like their own little universe. They have their own OS and their own stuff. And usually it's not a great software experience for Westerners. It's very much more geared to China. So I think on the software front, you're okay with Realme. I think where Realme falls flat a little bit compared to a OnePlus and Oppo is the number of updates and how long they update them for, right? But honestly, every Realme phone I've used is pretty solid. In fact, their flagship, the Realme GT6, that thing is pretty beefy. And last year, the GT5 Pro was essentially a OnePlus 12. Like metal frame, wireless charging. The only thing they just kind of cut down just a little bit, and that was it had that crazy like 4,000 nits display too, but it cut down a little bit and it 8 megapixel ultra wide.
Yeah, and that's
that
that's
was the
tough.
one thing.
That's yeah. This phone apparently has 2 years of major updates and then 3 years of security updates.
Yeah,
which,
exactly.
That's good. The fact that they're doing the security updates, but I've noticed with the OnePlus, even I guess that brand in general, they're not really guaranteeing updates for a very long period. Whereas, here in the States, we're seeing, Apple usually is about 5 years to 6, and then Samsung is 7, and Google is what, 7 as well?
If you are one of those people who doesn't keep a phone for more than 2 years, this is giving you things that you're not going to get from a Western phone, in the sense that you're getting like that. I mean, unless you buy a OnePlus 12R or something, where you get that 80 watt, 100 watt charging, you get that really kind of like the design is kind of a bit special. It's unusual. It's not the same, that round camera pod and stuff. I think, the argument could be made that you could spend a little more and get a OnePlus 12R and that have full band support for the US and stuff. And that's a total valid point to make, but it's still $200 more than that, or $150 more than that, right? So
yeah,
you're getting a better chip though, because this is not a Snapdragon 8 series, right? It's a 7 series. So, but I think there's room for this. I think that I'd rather see this phone. This one has a better camera than the OnePlus 12R. There's no doubt about it. You're not getting a 3x periscope telephoto with 50 megapixels on that. So, you have to go to the 12 for that. And then immediately you're in a completely different category of product. So if you want something that's like Oxygen OS, and you're not too concerned about, like, maybe you're on T-Mobile where generally these phones just work like a charm, and you don't want to, you want to spend half the price of a 12, you don't care about the Snapdragon 7 series, this is it. Like, it's
good to have options.
Exactly. So glad these phones are coming soon. I believe that the Nothing Phone 2a Plus and the Realme 13 Pro Plus are currently available. They're out. And then there's a Vivo V40 series as well coming on August 7th, which is going to be very similar from Vivo. We don't know anything about it yet. We don't, other than it's going to have the Zeiss cameras that the previous Vivo V series had as well. And having played with those Vivo phones before, the V30 most recently, they're really kind of positioning themselves like Realme as like, we're camera first, mid-range, affordable phone, and $300 to $400. You're getting like multiple 50 megapixel cameras, periscope telephoto, or like a dedicated portrait lens, and you're getting like a 50 megapixel front camera on some of them. It's like really camera centric. And with Vivo, their partnership is not Hasselblad, it's Zeiss. Even though Realme has that the same camera system as the Hasselblad. They don't put Hasselblad on the box, but it's pretty much the same. You just don't get that orange button. So it's interesting to see that. With a Vivo, you actually do get the Zeiss branding and the Zeiss color science and all that. So keep an eye on that if you're in a market that sells the Vivo and you don't mind the weird Vivo software that's coming August 7th. Let's talk about Apple iOS 18 public beta. I haven't played with it. You have. What's your experience been so far, and what stands out to you that you think is going to make a difference to iPhone users when this hits like mainstream channels?
I think it's a big deal because it's kind of Apple's admission that people can finally customize their phones the way they want to. And that's been a big part of Android for many years. And iPhone users are it's interesting because they kind of just take what Apple gives them, and you have like this mass amount of people who are just kind of, I would say, basic users. They love the phone. It works really well. But then you also do have the power users of the iPhone that kind of want things their way. They know how to do things a little bit more. And so that's where things like shortcut, like to me, the fact that the iPhone has, icons that you can't place anywhere in the old versions, plus shortcuts are like two completely different things going on. Like the average person just wants to put their icons. Then you have these like high end kind of like, more tech savvy folks that are using like shortcuts, which are really nerdy and like, just something like, you probably remember back on Android, what was it, Tasker?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I'm
that's what
actually
shortcuts
surprised
are.
that shortcuts exist on iPhone. Like, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. I'm happy that iPhone users have that. It's just more like it's so nerdy. Like it's
Yes.
so like
Yes.
I don't think the average person can get their head around this at all. The fact that
No.
Apple gave us this is kind of like amazing, really.
Yeah. And I think that's what's cool about Apple in a certain way is that they do those weird things where, even something as simple as, and I haven't even gotten into iOS 18 yet, but like, if you start like the way Siri works is as good or as bad as Siri is, like if you like, I use Telegram for like 90% of my texting.
Me too.
And so it understands after the first 2 times you text someone that like, hey, do you want to use Telegram from now on? Whereas like, I remember those used to be kind of on Android where it said like, hey, with the voice assistant, but now the voice assistant is all over the place on Android. So it's like tough to set things. But my point is like, Apple is smart enough to know, like, remember, like even with your music service, it's like, okay, you want to use Spotify? We'll use Spotify next time. So I think that there's like 2 weird divergent paths with iPhone where like on some things I do respect and really like about it, but other things it's just like, come on, Apple. Anyway, with all that said, I think iOS, the public beta that I've been testing lets you customize your phone way more than ever. You can place icons wherever you want. You can tint them, which is such another weird thing that Apple lets you do. Very Android-ish. The different screens for the control center are really cool because now, I don't know if you ever use Control Center, but it's that swipe down from the right. Now you can have like multiple things. You can also set shortcuts in there. So I think that this really makes your phone your own more than ever before. But I also think that it's something that Apple has to do because the way the operating system is so locked down that shortcuts and all these like shortcuts in Control Center are kind of necessary to like run things that you want to do on your phone your way, if that makes sense.
I mean, like the kind of quintessential shortcut that a lot of people use as an illustration is the, call me an Uber to my current location to go home, right? Like you can set that up so that wherever your GPS location is right now, you push that button, you run that shortcut and it gets you an Uber in the background to wherever you are, going to wherever you've defined in advance is home. Great. But like you have to unlock. You have to go on the home screen and you have to tap on an icon right now to make that happen.
Right.
Now with, Control Center, you can put that in there. Like maybe the bottom right corner is your go home. I'm done for the day. I'm taking an Uber home, and you just swipe down, click, done.
Yeah. And you can do that with shortcuts on the home screen. You can set, instead of just flashlight and camera, you can now set those as well. So I feel like they've done a real lot when it comes to just being able to make your phone your own with the, everything from the, placing the icons to all these little shortcuts and the definite, the ability to put these things in different places. Widgets are much better. So you can now tap on an app and it shows you like the widgets that are available for that app.
Right.
You can resize things really easily. So again, I think a lot of this is stuff that like, okay, big deal. But with iPhone, like it's so homogenous, like it's all the same for everyone. Like people like to get different cases. They like to do, different colors and screens and stuff. But like, I do feel like this is like next level of making your phone operate the way you want it to operate with the limitation of, you're going to use Siri. People are looking forward to, kind of the AI stuff, which I have not played with. But if that works too, that could be a big game changer. A couple other things I like. The security features, I think, are really smart. The locking down apps, if you want, like behind a passcode or your Face ID. So, if someone happens to get your phone, they still can't open a certain app, which I really think I appreciate that. The hidden app folder. I think that this is going to cause a lot of issues in relationships because people are going to have apps hidden in there that they're.
But it's good for kids, right? Kids who borrow your iPhone or whatever.
It's great for so many things. I mean, if you just have an app on your phone that you don't really want anyone to know about or see, why not? Like we're adults, like have a private place on your phone for stuff. Like I think that that's respectable. And I think that that's, there's 2 sides to that, obviously. And then let's see, what else do I like? The satellite messaging, which I know is probably going to eventually make its way to the Android phones as well. And I think the passwords app, I know that that's such a silly thing that like a lot of tech savvy users already have a password app, but it's still not at the adoption level that you would expect. And I think by Apple coming out with the passwords, a fully fledged standalone passwords app, it's going to be the number one passwords app in the world overnight when iOS 18 hits, which for better or for worse.
I mean, it's all there, right? Like you've been saving your passwords to your iPhone or your iOS device if you have a Mac as well into, the keychain, what they call, right? But it's not easily accessible. It's kind of, there's a lot of friction if you want to get to a password. Like you want to look up a password, you have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops on a Mac or a PC or even an Android phone right now. So having a single app that is no longer in the settings that you can tap that brings you to your passwords, use authentication with Face ID. I think that's going to be a game changer, and I'm sure we're going to see that on Android 15 as well, or if not 15, soon on 16, because it's already starting to I've noticed over the last couple of years on Android, Google's making it a lot easier for you to get your passwords now. Both on Chrome and on your Android phone. So,
yeah,
cool stuff. And question for you. You know how the shortcuts, you can share shortcuts with people. So if you create one, you can be like, here, download my shortcut. Can you download layouts? Like if you have a really cool home screen layout that you really like, did Apple make that available?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I remember them when they came out with the Apple Watch, they said you could share your watch setup with other people. I'm not sure where that went. That was a couple of years ago, last I heard. But no, they only go a certain way, only so far with all this stuff. I will say one other feature that I think is really useful is the adoption of RCS. I was texting with a friend. I was on my Android and he was on the iPhone. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, I was like seeing typing indicators and the read receipt. And I was like, wait, what? I'm like, are you on your iPhone? Are you on the beta? He's like, well, yeah, I downloaded it to my main device by accident. I didn't mean to, but I did. I'm like, this is incredible. Like, I really do think for the average person, the ability to have, the typing indicators, read receipts, share large
high
photos
resolution
and videos.
Content. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, just that alone it will finally bridge this divide of like people. I mean, I hate to say this, but people just see Android as a lesser than iPhone. And there's no reason why that should be the case. This is an Apple created problem. But the thing is, people do see it that way. And I think a lot of it is because it's like, oh, you can't share a high resolution picture or video from your phone. That makes no sense. And so I think that this bridging of that divide between Android and iPhone will be a huge leveling factor for these two platforms, where people will finally be like, okay, yeah, you have an Android. That's cool. Like, great.
You have green bubbles, but I can still send you my high resolution video and we can still work together.
Yeah.
Big deal. Big deal. I love it. Well, thanks for the rundown. This is amazing. This is the Rich that I love. The Rich that shares all the stuff. Like, dang. Awesome. We have a few other little tidbits I want to get the audience aware of. Pixel 9 Pro Fold thickness is leaked, and oh my goodness, is it exciting. It looks like it's obviously thinner than the Z Fold 6. That's not too surprising, but we're talking about the same league of thickness as the OnePlus Open here, and the same form factor as well, which I'm really excited about.
I know you. How excited are you for this phone? Like, obviously you get every phone in the world. I guarantee this will be your next phone.
This is going to be my next phone, because I tell you what, I took the Pixel Fold for a spin last year and I almost made it my next phone. It's just that the crease, it felt too fragile and the crease was too pronounced and there was a lot of reflection on the main screen. But I love the Passport form factor and I love the camera and I love the pixelness of it all as a Pixel user. And I've been using OnePlus Open and Pixel all year long, pretty much. Pixel 8 Pro right now as my main, and as a kind of a second phone, I've got the OnePlus Open for more productive stuff. I want to merge the two, right? Like I love that there is a potential with this new Pixel 9 Pro Fold, what a name, terrible name.
Yeah.
That there's a potential for me to finally get there without compromise, like having a thin phone that has the right form factor, has the right cameras, still doesn't have the right processor, but I'll live with it.
Yeah,
I
That's the
still
bummer.
think that the software features on this are going to be what I want the most, and I'm going to get them. So I might be able to, have my cake and eat it too, as it were. So yes, very excited about that. But it's interesting because we're getting more leaks, right? Is the weight is still pretty high, 257 grams. That's the weight of last year's Z Fold 5, roughly. And as we know, the current Galaxy Z Fold 6 and the OnePlus Open at 239 grams, so much lighter, right?
Yeah. But it's all how it sits in your hand, I think,
It is.
too.
It's
So
not.
I think
That's not going to be a deal breaker for me. But for some people, be aware that yes, we're getting the thinness, but we're not getting the lightweightness.
yeah, which I do think was a big improvement on the Samsung, the Z Fold 6. It feels extremely lightweight, especially when you pick up the Fold from Pixel like last year's. You're like, this thing is a brick compared to what Samsung's doing. But I think that form factor of the Pixel, the kind of the passport kind of style, and I haven't seen have they made it larger this year? I didn't really see all the leaks on it, but I think that was my biggest issue last year. It was a little bit squat for me,
Yeah.
but I could deal with it because, like you said, I mean, it's really the software and the combination of cameras. It has so much going for it that I fell in love with last year's, but I just couldn't make it my own because it felt unfinished. It felt
Exactly,
like this.
exactly. It felt fragile and unfinished. And also, it had a G2 tensor chip. This is going to have a G4. The G3 really solved a lot of problems for me, having gone through all the G and all the Pixel evolutions, all the Pro models, 6 Pro, 7 Pro, 8 Pro. 8 Pro is finally at the place where I no longer have an overheating phone on a regular basis. It happens, it still happens, but it's not, oh my God, like I have a heater in my hand. And also, general cellular reception performance has been better on G3. So G4 is a minor evolution of G3, so I'm expecting it to be, definitely better than G2 on the Pixel Fold was like insanely, like you overheated all the time.
Yeah.
Remember when we were in Korea and I was using it because I didn't want to. I wanted to do a proper unboxing on my Z Fold 5, so I was actually still using the Pixel Fold, and it was so hot there. Remember, it just melted in my hand. Like it was just like I was like, this thing's gonna catch fire in my hand.
It's warm all the time. It's just that phone is a heater, and it's yeah. And I actually forgot that it didn't have the latest chip in it because I forgot that the Pixel 8 Pro came out like couple months after that. Now I'm glad also, by the way, that Google is kind of aligning all these at the same time. It makes life a lot easier for people that are choosing between these devices. I think in a perfect world, they would also come out with the A at the same time, but I think that takes away from the sales of these.
It's so close now. I'm wondering how they're going to do this. Maybe they need to come out with the A earlier in the year now, because I do like having a bit of a TikTok cycle there.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. Another thing, by the way, that came up this week in news was that those 9 series Pixels are only going to ship with 14, not 15, because it's not ready yet. In the fall, it'll be ready, and they used to ship in the fall. So that's interesting because it's the first time in a long time that we haven't shipped a new Pixel with the latest version of Android.
Yeah, that's so what does that mean for the updates? Because you'll just get it a couple months after.
I think it's not going to make a huge difference. Like, it's 7 years, right?
Yeah. If you're keeping your phone for 7 years, that's amazing. Like, I don't know who is doing that.
I would like to even go beyond that and say, if you have a folding phone and it lasts 7 years, wow.
Yeah.
No offense. Like, I think they're getting much more rugged and reliable, but like, I'm still feeling a little iffy about, like, considering how abused my OnePlus Open has been. I'm actually surprised it hasn't broken yet. Like, I've been waiting for the day where I pick it up and I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a vertical line on the main display, and that's it. I need to get it fixed. Because I'm not like throwing it around or anything, but I mean, I've sat on it. Like, I'm not a light person. I've dropped it like in the case, so there's no cosmetic damage, but I'm just like waiting for it. Whereas, in the early days of Pixel Fold, like, some people had problems just using it, right?
Mm-hmm.
With I know it was a very small percentage, and of course Samsung now has kind of perfected the bulletproofness of folding phones, but I still don't think 7 years. Nobody's going to keep that for 7 years.
Well, if you're spending that much money on it, though, some people want to keep
4
it as
years,
long
I
as
can
possible.
see.
Yeah, 4 years.
And
And then you'll
But
get a great upgrade. I mean, even 3 years at this point is a really
my concern is not so much that, like, even if you take care of it and it's rugged enough and lasts 7 years, like the software, you won't be able to run the modern apps at that point.
Yeah,
like,
I know they don't really talk about that with this whole 7 years software updates and
it
all
looks
this
good
stuff.
on paper, but it's
Yeah.
unrealistic. I think anything past 5 years is like, forget it. This isn't
Yeah.
just me, but all right. Last couple of things we have on the table here is like, well, HMD Barbie phone coming August 28th. Now, the only reason I put that in there is because I completely forgot about this.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like, do you remember at MWC, they were like, HMD, we're rebranding. We're not going to make Nokia branded phones anymore. They're going to be HMD branded. And to be honest, so far, all the HMD phones they've launched have been boring and crappy and budget. And we're talking Moto G series, but like, they're not trying hard at all. And it's bugging me because I know they can do so much better. Remember the PureView Nokia 9 that they did a few years back?
Yeah.
We know they can do it. But this is kind of in line with, if you're going to make a crappy phone, brand it a Barbie phone. Great. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying it's going to be crappy. Like, don't get me wrong. These phones are usable, but they're not phones that I would recommend. So it'll be interesting to see if the Barbie phone is even a smartphone. Is it just a flip folding phone like Nokia still makes?
I think so.
HMD?
I think it's, yeah. I mean, maybe it'll have like a basic browser on it, but I mean, don't you think the Barbie thing is kind of like, the ship has sailed on that? Because this needed to come out like 6 months ago, or even timed with like Barbie coming out on like on demand or something. I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be tough, but I guess Barbie lasts forever. So
well,
maybe.
that's it. But at the same time, I 100% agree with you. It's like, this is so typical HMD. They're just like not able to like deliver in time, and they announce stuff, and it's like almost like, when Sony announces an Xperia, it takes 6 months for it to launch. By the time it launches, you're like, what? Oh yeah,
there's been like
Sony
3
phone.
Spider-Man since between the announcement and the launch.
Yeah, and then conversely, you have Poco F6, coming out as just came out this past week as a special edition with a Wolverine, Deadpool combo on it. Like they are very good at the Chinese are very good at just pumping out like special editions like that. They get a tie-in with the IP in China and they launch it.
Right.
So that's kind of cool. Like, but that's timely. The phone came out at the same time as the movie came out. So. Yeah.
They timed the announcement of this HMD with Barbie when it was like hot, and now I feel like it's subsided a little bit, and now the phone's going to come out, and look, I don't think this was going to be a big seller to begin with. I think it's novelty.
It's a flip dumb phone running KaiOS. KaiOS is kind of like a remember that Android 1 or whatever it was, or that
kind of the lightweight version.
Android.
Yeah.
KaiOS is a similar thing. It's not compatible with Android, but it's app capable, and it has an app store, and it's actually pretty good real-time OS that run on really, really low-end chips. So it should be okay, right? Like remember the banana phone they relaunched a while back, and remember that tiny they made a flip phone as well. I can't remember what the marketing tie-in was on that one, but we're talking about 2 or 3 years ago. That was also KaiOS. So KaiOS has been around, and it's kind of becoming the app-ish OS for cheap, dumb phones. Basically.
When you don't want to license Android.
Exactly. And then finally, there was a Snapdragon chip this week, and I just mentioned that because it's interesting. The Snapdragon chips have gotten those 4 series. We used to kind of like roll our eyes, goes, oh, 4 series, yeah, whatever. That's going to end up on like some kind of Moto G, but they're getting more powerful. If you compare this chip with the previous one, this is like getting almost as good as some of the 6 series. Snapdragons. So, should you get excited about it? No, but it exists, and it's interesting to see that trickle down effect.
Yeah.
Like all the stuff we saw on the 8 2 years ago is now on a 4, right? Not all of it, but a lot of it. And it's amazing to me at the pace at which this is going. It's a 4 nanometer chip, right? And, it supports super high-res cameras, supports LPDDR4X. For RAM, it's got a bunch of really signature features that I think are going to make it pretty good. And remember, these chips are much, much, much more affordable than even a 7 series. The 6 series is getting in a good price range for, affordable phones, but this could end up in a, $150 phone from Moto and be a way better experience than a MediaTek Helio 4G chip because it does have 5G, right? So
That's what's so great about this technology these days is that these companies are all seeing kind of this, like you said, this trickle down. And Apple kind of does this as well with like, these chips that they've created. They keep putting in like some of their older devices or the, new devices that are like less expensive. And I think we're seeing that there's just so much synergy with these companies. They've developed this great technology. It's the cutting edge tech for that year. And then 2 years later, 3 years later, it's still really good, but now it's a lot cheaper and they can put it in these other devices. And those devices become really good at a much better price point.
100%. So expect some Snapdragon 4S Gen 2 phones coming out anytime. Xiaomi is generally the poster child for this, either as a Redmi or a Poco or something. I'm sure that if I dig deep enough, there has been a phone announced this week with that chip. It's already happened. But it's always worth mentioning and keeping track of what's happening on the chipset front, just because it gives you an idea of what's coming, right? All right. Well, listen, Rich, thanks for being on the show. Do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet and on TV and radio and also social media, please?
Sure. Super easy. richontech.tv is my website. And if you're watching TV, you may see me on there. If you live in LA, KTLA Channel 5, listening to the radio on a bunch of stations nationwide, KFI AM 640 here in Los Angeles. But again, my whole deal is just bringing kind of like what you're doing, but to, the average person that may not be into technology, but they need to know what's going on out there because, I get it. Once a year, twice, once every 3 years, you may go into the Apple store and choose a new product, but it's good to be educated about some of these things that are happening. And also the value proposition, like you said, with the Pixel 8a, it's like, there's so many devices out there that could be better than like some of this expensive stuff. And this is all you need. And it's good to tell people about that.
Yeah, I love your content. There's a podcast as well you do every week. You got YouTube channel. I mean, the whole shebang. So check out the website and on social?
At Rich on Tech.
And that's everywhere pretty much, right?
As much as the place I can get it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Same with me and Tankerl TNKGRL. Speaking of which, that's how you can find me on social. And it's like Tankerl, the comic book, Drop the Vowels, TNKGRL. And that's on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Threads, on Instagram, everywhere. And, please follow me, chat with me and Rich about this podcast. My podcast is at mobiletechpodcast.com and you can subscribe there. I hope you spread the word, tell your friends. We're on all the major platforms, so it's easy to find: Spotify, Apple, Google, everything. So check it out. And there's a YouTube channel, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. You know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, all that good stuff. Comment about the podcast as well. Tell me what of all these new mid-range phones, which one you would want. There's a Patreon. I mentioned it. We did an unboxing for the first time. For those of you on video, you enjoyed that. And if you want to enjoy something like that in the future, check out the Patreon at patreon.com/Tankerl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. $5 a month buys you a video version every week in advance, a day before the audio version. So you get to see me and Rich and phones and, bloopers sometimes, extra content like this unboxing. So consider helping me out if you can. And there's other options there if you can't afford $5 or if you want to give me a bit more. And also, if you want to help out but you don't want to use Patreon, there's a PayPal link in the show notes. You can buy me a coffee or something, a one-time donation. I'd appreciate your support no matter what. And speaking of support, I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. So as you know, I'm constantly reviewing multiple phones, and while that's fun, it also means I'm constantly spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. That's where Mint Mobile comes in, and that's who I'm partnering with for today's podcast. If you also want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. As tech-savvy early adopters, you've probably heard of Mint Mobile before, but let me quickly tell you how awesome their service is. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around and waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current device and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM free of charge. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, lightning fast 5G, and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link mintmobile.com/mobiletech to get premium wireless starting for $15 a month. That's mintmobile.com/mobiletech. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And I want to thank you again, Rich, for being awesome and being on my show and telling us all your thoughts, especially the beta. That was really cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Miriam. Appreciate you having me on. Really do.
Absolutely. We'll have you on again in the future. And folks, we'll have a show next week, so stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.